Good afternoon, everyone. This is Matt Murphy at WoodenBoat Magazine, and thanks for joining us on WoodenBoat Live this afternoon. Our guest today is Arista Holden. Last week I had mentioned that Jan Adkins would be here, and we had a scheduling conflict, and we're lucky to connect with Arista in the meantime. And Arista is a wooden boat correspondent who's written some pretty remarkable pieces based on her travels over the past several years. The most recent was on the Irish trading ketch ILEN, a boat built in Ireland, which spent its working life in the Falkland Islands, was repatriated to Ireland, and recently relaunched after an epic restoration. And Arista traveled to Ireland and sailed on that, and wrote a beautiful cover story about it, which we'll discuss shortly. We'll also be discussing Arista's career in traditional boats, which began pretty early in her childhood, and has progressed to a deep involvement with the Atlantic Challenge contest of seamanship. And we're doubly lucky today because our mutual friend Misha Plekhanov from St. Petersburg, Russia, will be joining us. And Misha runs the Atlantic Challenge station in Russia and has some interesting perspectives on the Russian involvement with this event. And without any further ado, welcome to Arista Holden. Hi, Arista.
Hi, Matt.
Thank you
Thanks
for
for
being
having
here.
me. Thank
Once
you.
again, it's a minor miracle that everything works here. Um, and if I'm watching the comment stream, I see we've got a nice audience developing. If somebody would please just chime in and give us a thumbs up that everything's working, I'd appreciate it. This is, after all, amateur television. Arista, tell us a little about your early years with wooden boats, and how did you come to all this? It's really, as I said in the promo, a vocation and an avocation for you.
Thanks. Well, I have to thank my father. He and my great grandfather, Elijah Kellogg. The apprentice shop in Rockport at the time, actually in Bath, where they originally started, had built one of the first boats that they built was a copy of my great grandfather's boat, a Maine Hampton boat, one of the ubiquitous boats of the Maine coast in the mid 1800s. And they named it Elijah. My dad, who was a geophysicist in Colorado, heard about that, and he had a life change, career change, and he said, "We're going to Maine. I'm gonna be a wooden boat builder."
And that
Uh,
was that. Wow.
that was that. So we packed up. I was 5, and he did a 2.5-year apprenticeship at the apprentice shop in Rockport, Maine. And part of my child care, I think, was just hanging around the shop, um, and talking to the different apprentices and getting to go to see the very festive launchings and celebrations that Lance Lee curated, and
Lance Lee being the founder of the apprentice shop.
founder and director at the time, and go sailing on his pinky schooner Perseverance as a 5-year-old, and even on the Bantry Bay gigs as a 5 and 6-year-old.
Mhm.
And I wasn't very impressed with those gigs because I was not rowing at the
Ah,
time.
yeah, and you are now, and we're going to
I
get to
am
those
now.
shortly. The
Yeah.
Bantry Bay gigs are 38 feet, something inches long, open
Yep.
boats, and we have some photos coming up. But before we get to those, I just a little more about Lance and an illustration of who he is. Lance really brings a scholarly as well as a hands-on element to all of this, and is a student of both Kurt Hahn, the founder of Outward Bound, and of Joseph Conrad. And here we have one of Lance's relatively, well, I guess I'm dating myself. It's not that recent at this point, but this is called Trem, which is short for, if you would take it from memory.
Tremolino, and it was built by a former apprentice in 2008, launched in Rockland, Maine. It was built in Nobleboro, Maine. It's a lateen rigged, and it's Lance's boat, and it's called a Balancel Espanol. And Joseph Conrad, the writer, wrote about it. I wrote a story about the Tremolino, and we don't know if it's a real story or if it's a fiction, but it's based on some of the boats that were in the Mediterranean at the turn of the 20th century. And here I am at the helm in a few years ago in 2013, doing a small Joseph Conrad workshop, where we read some Joseph Conrad and then went sailing in Trem. So Lance built this boat. Well, he had an apprentice build her based on a description of the boat in in the tale called Tremolino that was written by Joseph Conrad.
Wow, well, that's quite a feat, isn't it? I mean, to take the written word and turn it into a boat. And I suppose we could spend an hour on that.
Yeah,
on
and
that
so
one.
I mean, one of the beautiful things about Lance and the apprentice shop and living here on the Maine coast is the access to wooden boats and the diversity of them, where I feel so lucky to have an opportunity to sail lateen rigs and schooner rigs and dipping lug rigs and sprit rigs. There's multiple boat building schools here in Maine. The schooners that operate here, there's just cultural appreciation here, and I'm so lucky. That's definitely growing up here in this on this coast has influenced my love and my desire to celebrate these boats, and particularly small, open, very unique, diverse boats here working watercraft, to let other people have a chance at this, because they give us so much connection to culture, and they demand so much participation and engagement with the natural world and each other. And they each kind of have their own little intricate tricks to figure out.
Because I'm sure that this is an Irish gundalo. Do I have that correct?
Oh, it's so close. It's a
A
currach.
cara, cara.
Yep. And
Thank you.
there's so many different kinds of currachs around the British Isles in Ireland.
Mhm,
Like they're round. Sometimes they're called coracles in Welsh,
mhm,
or in Carrie and Claire currach. And this is a
mhm.
racing Noveg.
Now, this one was built
Nevo.
in, this was built in Maine at the apprentice shop. Do I have that right?
No,
And,
well, close, so close.
okay,
So many details.
maybe I should just stop talking.
No, no. This is an interview. So, um, in 2012, I was working with Lance Lee, compiling a book, and organizing his archive for him to compile a book about the apprentice shop and the history of the apprentice shop. And during that time, he spontaneously sent me off to Lithuania and Ireland, to go train some people in their Bantry Bay gig, and also stop through Ireland to meet the um, the builder and director of the ILEN project, Gary McMahon, and
Mhm.
one of his lead boat builders, James Madigan. Um,
Which, and the island is the catch that I mentioned at the outset. And rather than hold that in
yeah.
reserve, we'll pop a photo of
Okay,
that up
good.
here too.
So while I was in Ireland, I was kind of seeking out where are the traditional boats. There I saw a lot of fiberglass glass boats, where you see in all places now these days, and the few very distinctive traditional boats that I saw were currachs. They're like baskets, and they're skinned with canvas and painted with black paint or tar. And I was very intrigued. So I met James Madigan, who was a boat builder at the Limerick Boat Building School. And I asked if he'd be interested in coming to Maine to build some currachs here with us, with a group of people. And the people who came, they were people who have rowed currachs in clubs around the East Coast. And actually, this one went to a fellow in Milwaukee to his currach club. So I guess they raced them. And we invited him back in 2016 as well for another 2-week workshop. This boat came together, 25-foot boat came together in totally finished in 10 days.
And do I have it right that this boat led to a new professional interest for you, a small company that's a little challenged by the current pandemic conditions, but tell us a little about that, the name and what you're up to with it.
Yeah, I've started a business called Maritime World Expeditions, and I want to um, give access and offer some experience for people who are interested in building, sailing, or rowing traditional boats around the world. Will go to those places and row and sail those boats from the place that they came from. So I've been fortunate to build wonderful international connections through my work with Atlantic Challenge. Um, and so some of the countries on the list to go to are Ireland, France, the Basque Country, the north coast of Spain, and Norway, Denmark, the Azores. Those are some of the places on the list that I want to take people to and enjoy those
Yeah.
boats.
And clearly, I think we've made the point. This is not a an idle fascination for you. You've been to these places and done it. Here you are at the helm of a Norwegian femboring on an 800-mile journey up the west coast of Norway.
Yes.
Tell us about that. I believe that was in connection with the school.
Yes. Another wonderful connection through Atlantic Challenge. I was in Denmark, um, where the Atlantic Challenge contest was being hosted in 2016, and it's a Viking boat museum. I met one of the skippers of the Viking boats there. He told me about Viking Age navigation, which is where he sailed with just a sun compass and a sun stone to the to Iceland, without any modern compass, no watch, and we got there and back. So I was very intrigued, and he said, "Well, if you really want to know, you got to go to Fusen Folkhögskole, which is a folk high school, year-long folk school, a non-academic program in near Trondheim, Norway, in Rissa, um, where they do a year-long school program where you can learn to boat building, sailing, handcraft, or farming, and one of the teachers is an expert in Viking Age navigation. So I started correspondence with her, and because of my experience in sail training with Outward Bound, Atlantic Challenge, and other places, she invited me to join the students' year-long expedition at the end of their school year for the month of April and May. So I joined their 800-mile, 3-week trip to about 100 miles north of the Arctic Circle in their open boat, 42-foot femboring, which is
42 feet.
yeah, which is it's the sail is it's not quite square, it's trapezoidal, but it's the same lineage as the Vikings would have used.
You have a nice photo of that here. And we were talking before the interview about how the sail functions. And again, we could take hours with this, but you've made a deep study of this, and in fact parlayed that into another gig, so to speak, on another Viking ship, which we'll
Yeah.
get to in a moment. But this is the square sail on the femboring you sailed, and
Yep.
could you tell us a little bit about how it operates and how the topsail is reefed?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're cruising along, you throw up that topsail. It takes a while to haul it all the way up. But if, say, it's just getting a little too strong and you don't want to really reef, but you need to douse a little bit of sail, you can just, with a slippery hitch, just quickly drop the topsail behind the very top portion of the mainsail. So it's blanketed by the mainsail. So you just lose a little portion of the sail area, without needing to completely lower the topsail to the deck, so that after the gusts lay down, you can just zip that thing back up and be cruising along
And off you
again.
go. And do these? I mean, that's a square sail, mostly a downwind sail, but you were telling me that it has some pretty impressive windward ability, actually.
I was so shocked. This sail, you can sail 50 degrees off the wind. You can tack and jibe. Um, uh, yeah, so the tack of the sail is just a line. You can see this photo where there's a white patch on the sail next to the woman in orange. That's the tack of the sail, the leading edge. And you just wrap that around the pin that's going through the windward rail. And when it's time to tack or jibe, you switch the position of that. You just run that back aft, and it becomes the clue of the sail where the sheets are. So the tack is actually the sheet when it becomes pulled back, if that makes any
It
sense.
sure does. So yeah.
Then
Well,
you kind
thank
of
you.
do this long K turn or figure eight to do a tack or a jibe. You lose a ton of ground, but then you make it again, going 50 degrees off the wind.
And so you came out of this experience well, you're a professional mariner anyhow, a licensed captain, and have taught navigation for years. But you came out of this experience as one of the probably the few people on this coast with good experience in traditional Norwegian boats, and became skipper soon after that of Polaris, a newly built Viking ship operating from Gloucester, Massachusetts.
Yeah, that was really awesome. Just that little experience, a few weeks on that boat, I suddenly was the expert and um, asked to train the staff and people in how to operate this Viking boat replica that was built by Jay Smith out in Anacortes, Washington.
And
Shipped
Jay is the
over.
fellow with the white cap with his back to us in the
Yeah, and
forward portion of the boat.
he's made his living building Norwegian, building in the Norwegian tradition over in Washington. So he's the expert in his field in the U.S. And Stuart Boyd, the owner of Polaris and who had the vision to start a Viking boat in Gloucester, Massachusetts. So here we are at the 2018 June launching, exactly 2 years ago, here in Essex at the Shipbuilding Museum, where Harold Burnham has his shop there.
And that's Harold's shop in the background, is it not?
Yeah, and so this
And
is before we raised the sail. We just launched her and just getting our bearings there.
nice, great. Didn't you have a short spot? Was it the History Channel? I saw a clip on Facebook that made the
Yeah.
rounds a year
So
or so ago.
once you're an expert, after having done 3 weeks on a Norwegian trip, you suddenly are contacted by the Science Channel to tell us all about how Viking Age navigation works. And so, yeah, it's really easy to become an expert in the field. But after that, I did do an episode. It's America's Lost, Last Vikings, episode 2. And we sail Polaris, and I demonstrate how to use the sun compass. So after that, I did get a grant to work with the
Right.
real expert in Norway and bring her to Maine last fall to deliver some workshops and talks, and work with her more, like actually how to do it. So I feel redeemed.
And this was a John Gardner grant, is that correct?
Yeah, the
Yeah.
Traditional Small Craft Association puts
Uh-huh.
out the John Gardner Foundation grant to for anyone who's interested in preserving and celebrating distinctive parts of maritime history.
Great.
Anyone can apply, individuals.
Was this the same? Was this the same instructor from Fosen?
Yes, Fusen, Folk
Oh,
Hogskol.
thank you. I chickened out of saying it.
No problem. Yeah, so she actually didn't go on that sailing trip because something else came up. But no, I was the oldest by like 10 years on that sailing trip. My captain, very experienced, was in her mid-20s, and her first mate was 21, and everyone else was teens and early 20s, and they were amazing, so capable. I later, no, the only time I got to really work with Lena Borgesen was when she came to Maine for 10 days.
Oh,
I
nice.
hosted her
Great.
at my house. Yeah.
Great. And so, jumping back now, I mean, you came by your interest in big open sailing craft pretty honestly, because you've been involved for many years with Atlantic Challenge. Could you tell us a little about Atlantic Challenge, how it started, and what exactly it does, how the contest works?
Yeah.
And Misha is waiting in the wings here, and I'm going to invite him to join us in just a moment.
Okay, great.
From St. Petersburg, Russia. But please tell us about Atlantic Challenge. first?
Oh, well, I love Atlantic Challenge. I run the US branch of Atlantic Challenge. It operates in 16 countries at this point. But it started as a collaboration between the founder of the apprentice shop in Maine, Lance Lee, and the and Bernard Caderet, who has basically helped keep traditional boat building and use going in Brittany, France. And they met in 1984. They got together. I'm sure there was a bottle of wine. And they came up with this idea: how can we get our youth of these two nations together so they can come to know each other, but also experience the sea together? And how can we get more youth involved and also have an international aspect? So they found the perfect boat. It took them a while. It is called the Bantry Bay Gig. It's 38 feet long, and Bernard found it he discovered it in an Irish maritime museum in Dublin. It was preserved for 150 years after it was basically acquired from the English after the French aided Ireland in 1796 during a battle. And it was in perfect condition. And they saw, like, you can put 13 people in there. There's 10 rowing stations. This is great to get a lot of team building happening. So, and it's elegant. It's originally a French boat, has beautiful lines. It's fast. So it both appealed to both of them. And the apprentice shop built the first two.
And the rig, Arista,
Yes.
the rig is not original to the boat? Or?
No, it's not original. It's speculative. It's a French rig of the era of the late 1700s. So it's a dipping lug rig, which requires a few people at each sail to carefully lower this lug, down, and bring the sail to the other side. And the windward halyard is the windward stay. Okay, so the event, so it's happened every 2 years since then. The first one was in 1986 in New York City, and then it was hosted in France, and then it's been hosted by 9 different countries at this point. It's been hosted every 2 years for a whole week, and more nations build boats or acquire them from other countries that have extra and participate in this week-long contest of seamanship, where all the participants, up to about 300 of them, basically camp together, eat together, and during the day compete in different sailing, rowing, complicated events. The picture you're showing right now is a race mark rounding in Bantry, Ireland in 2012. And the event was oars and sails. So you sail the downwind legs of a triangle and you row the upwind leg. And this is the transition zone from going from sail to lowering the masts, getting out these 18-foot long oars, 10 of them, and transitioning to rowing before a sailboat comes careening around and smashing you in the side. So it's pretty dynamic.
And there are many countries represented here. And you mentioned this year's contest, and which was to have been held in St. Petersburg. And I'm going to invite Misha to join us now. And Misha is the head of the head of the. We just have a little countdown going. Hello, Misha.
Hello, folks.
Misha Plekhanov from St. Petersburg, Russia. And Misha, do I have it correct that you are in charge of the Atlantic Challenge Station in St. Petersburg?
Yes, I'm the head of Atlantic Challenge branch in Russia.
Yeah, and Arista, you were scheduled to travel there this year.
Yeah, I was very much looking forward to it. I just want to say that when I entered Atlantic Challenge in 2002 as a participant, I didn't join the American team because they were all filled up. I joined the Russian team, and that because they needed more people. They couldn't bring their whole team to Maine for that contest. And I studied Russian after that. I was so warmly welcomed by the team. I wanted to go travel with them the next year. I did. And thanks to Misha and all of his teammates that welcomed me. I was so excited to bring our team to Russia to get that same welcoming spirit.
Well, I hope that comes to pass next year. And this photo in the lower right, this black and white photo, is this from a Russian trip across the Atlantic to Nova Scotia? Do I have that right?
No, I don't think so. I cannot see very well.
I'm going to put it a little bigger, and we'll still be able to hear us. But this is a group.
Yes, exactly. Yes,
Yeah.
it is
Okay.
1994, and this is a Russian team in front of the stern or transom of Russian gig Enchante, which is built with the help of Atlantic Challenge USA here in St. Petersburg, and then it was transported on the ship across the Atlantic. We leave the ship in Nova Scotia, then it drove to Rockland. We completed the gig, and then we went compete to Canada on this gig. So it was quite a story.
Misha, we are looking at an unfinished gig here that will be completed when you reach Maine.
Yes, exactly. We brought her uncompleted. It was not completed at that time.
And Arista sent me this photo from the launch.
I just want to add, did Misha, their travel plans fell through, so he brought his team to Murmansk, and they asked a fishing trawler if they would take them across the Atlantic with their boat and crew.
You hitchhiked across the Atlantic.
He hitchhiked
pretty much.
to get to
Pretty
the
much. We
contact
hitchhiked across Atlantic. Yes.
with an unfinished boat, not even having ever used one of these boats.
Who does that?
Wow. This guy.
It was pretty crazy. It was pretty crazy. We did that again, traveling to Denmark in 1998, and then to France in 2002. And we stopped doing it. It's enough. Hitchhiking across the seas.
Right. Yeah, and Misha, you have some photos or some paintings on the wall behind you of Atlantic Challenge.
These paintings, they must be, these views which are on the paintings must be familiar to Arista, because it is the drawings of our friend Boris from Moscow, the painter, and it's taken on the time it made during the time when Arista was staying with us and sailing near St. Petersburg, Russia, on Tatlebin Island, which is artificial island, a fortress built in beginning of 20th century. It's basically this island. It's 20 miles away from St. Petersburg, and we copy the concept from Lancesley Greens Island, which is located right 14 miles off Rockland. And it works so well, and we love this island, and it works very well for training people. You get them isolated from all the obstacles which city and a modern life brings you. You isolating them you're giving them just boat, food, tents, and they live there for 2 weeks. They train, they communicate, they have to, and it works very well to bring the crew together and to continue on with Atlantic Challenge, because it's continuous education of more experienced person to a less experienced person.
And you mentioned this being inspired by Lance Lee's place on Greens Island. And Arista,
Yes.
you've spent considerable time there training trainers. Is that a program with Atlantic Challenge?
Yeah, we train trainers. Yeah, and Misha's been part of that as well.
You have, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I was on Greens Island for 3 times. First time was when we first came in 1991. That this is time for when I first was introduced to Lancesley and to main community the amount of wooden boats, the traditional wooden boats you have was just amazing. And then I was there in 1997, and then with my own crew in 2002. And I'm looking forward to being in Belfast in a couple of years there.
Oh, good. Well, we can't wait to see you.
Yeah, because we're going to host after Misha hosts in Maine
good.
in 2023.
Oh, great. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, the isolation where you can really focus in on a community and build a team. Our crew members take turns cooking, hauling water from the well, taking care of the boats. and it's a necessary period to build absolute trust between the crew members, and unity, so that we can be safe on the water during the contest.
And Misha, you've taken things, you were telling me before the broadcast, you've taken things with the design in a slightly new direction with a plywood version of the Bantry Bay gig.
Yeah, we're very much concerned with the amount of hours and the skills required to build a gig. While in Russia right now, we don't have much. We have lots of interest, but not much boats on the water, and we need to fill the gap. We need to give the boats to people, and we thought that if we create some construction which allows building the gig not during 1 year, but in less than a year, let's say during the school year, by the kids somewhere in a school or in a youth club, it will drive the whole idea of people being on the water forward very, very much. So
will these boats qualify for the contest, or must the contest? Did the contest?
Unfortunately not. Unfortunately not, because the Bantry Bay class rules are written so that it have to be traditionally built boat with a carvel planking. However, maybe in a year or two we will have 10 or 12 boats, and we can just invite people to sail, to stop and go sailing together. So right now, for Atlantic Challenge, if you want to participate in Atlantic Challenge, you need to ship your own boat to the country where the contest will be held. And it's a lot of money, which is not easy to find. And if the host country can provide boats, it's always better, and you get more participants and more exchange between between different countries, and which is really the aim.
Great. Well, Misha, it's wonderful to see you. And I just have I want to make room for a few more photos here. So I'm going to put your image down here in the staging area and for a moment. And Arista, there's one more photo here I wanted to put up from your Lofoten journey.
Yeah.
Although this is not Lofoten, but
no, it's south of about 70 miles south of Lofoten Islands, but it's still above the Arctic Circle.
And it's such an evocative photo, and it leads me to ask you about the meaning of traditional boats to you, and it just amazes me that we have a mutual friend in Misha, and people all over the world who are connected by these humble objects. What is that?
Yeah, I just want to say that these objects maybe feel obsolete, but I don't think so. And I think they don't need to be just nostalgic reminders, but they can be tools to create inspiring lives. And I think that they create the spaces to deepen connection with both the natural environment, with the people aboard, and to develop real problem solving skills and communication, and to test your mettle and develop real capability. In the physical world, there's only so much you can glean from the screen. And I don't want, it feels like my purpose in life is to make sure that maintains access to these experiences where you can practice leadership and gain skills and gain connection to the elements and to the diverse tricks of self-sufficiency that are provided by each distinctive vessel that whether it be from Norway or Maine or Spain or wherever. So I just that's why I think they're still important. They help us practice care and develop people.
Great. Thank you. And I'd just like to bring Misha back for a few minutes. And where did you go, Misha? There you are.
I'm here.
Hello again. Yeah, thank
Hello
you for
again.
letting me hide you away for a moment. Misha, thank you for staying up late with and chatting with us today. And I look forward to seeing you in a few years. And Arista, thank you for adapting your schedule and spending some time with us this afternoon.
It's such a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. And it's so fun to see Misha also and see you both. Thank you both for the work you're doing. Really, like you're both super inspirational, and I'm so lucky to know you.
Oh, well, thanks. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in. And we're going to be off next week, and watch the Facebook page for an announcement for the week after's interview. And thanks again.
All right.
And
Thank you, guys.
have a good day. Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.